California State Prison is not a place that you want to visit.
Prison officials said the man who died was shot in the buttocks, but it was not yet clear whether that was the cause of his death.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. New video. While this is a new video, the subject matter is something that I did a while back. However, people have been asking me lately, I guess because the names are similar. I recently talked about a riot, the Pelican Bay riot, New Folsom riot.
Shots were fired. I don't know how many at this time. I have from 15 to 17 shots.
Folsom was built to house men who have committed the most serious crimes, and its population includes prisoners considered the most violence-prone. Like other California prisons, Folsom is overcrowded. The prison was built for 1,700 inmates. It currently houses about 3,200. Officials.
And in both riots, as with a lot of riots in California, unfortunately, a Southerner was killed by a correctional officer. And in these two riots, the names are very similar. In Pelican Bay, Shanki was shot right here with a Mini 14 rifle. Obviously, you're not surviving that. That's Shanki. And then in New Folsom, Shanki was shot. And he was shot in his right butt cheek. The bullet hit his hip bone and went across his chest, blowing out his aorta, and he bled out. Because the bullet had struck him in the right butt cheek, the officers, no one knew how serious his injury was, and he wound up bleeding out within minutes. We'll get to that. My thing with it is this, and let me start with Shanki. Let me reintroduce Shanki to the world. As I said, I told this story years ago, but I'm going to tell it again here. Shanki and I were friends. When I did smoke weed a couple times when I first got to prison. And I think I smoked weed about 3 times, 4 times, and it was with Shanki most of the time. I remember one day I had just got a batch of chronic, and Shanki was playing handball. And I was like, hey, you want to blaze? And he left the game. And before I finish that thought, that memory, let me tell you guys something else. Prior to that, Shanki had been asked if he would do a hit. And Shanki said, yeah. Shanki was from Villa Boys Pasa, Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley, SGV. And the target was a guy from El Monte Flores, a really big, well-known gang, barrio, in the SGV as well. So these are homies from the SGV. So they asked Shanki if he would move on him. Now, the guy from Flores was very, very well known to be, he was, when you looked at him, he was big. He had a lot of size, a lot of muscle on him. And he had a reputation of being very good physically with his hands. He had a reputation in the LA County Jail in the riots with blacks for being able to take on multiple people at a time and do well. Okay. And so this was not going to be, in anyone's mind that was aware prior, this wasn't going to be an easy move. Shanki didn't hesitate. Shanki said, I got him. I got along well with both. I knew prior to the hit what was going to happen to the guy from EMF, from Flores. He didn't have a bad case. He stuck his hands in the cookie jar. He got into some dope that was what we call hot dope. hot dope means it belongs to the legends. Who, regardless of who has it on the yard, and regardless of the fact that the legends weren't on the yard at the time, that dope was designated for them, and all he was supposed to do was pick it up from someone on the yard and drop it off to someone else on the yard. And that was his responsibility due to something that happened prior. And the guy from Flores just decided he was going to dip into it and thought nobody would find out. And the first time it happened, you wasn't really noticed. The second time it happened, it was like, wait a minute. What did you send? They went and approached the guy, and he's like, I sent this. And they're like, okay, cool. The third time it happened again, and that's when they said, okay, get him. So I remember the day that it happened, the guy from Flores kept coming around me, and I kept shaking him. Hey, what's up, homie? Yeah, I got to go do this. And I think he knew. And I think he was thinking, should he just get off on somebody on the yard? And I was like, is this fool? Because I kept thinking, is this fool thinking he's going to get off on me? Because he kept coming around me. Well, the yard lasted, the entire yard. That yard recall, you know, everybody will go and shake each other. Say, hey, Holmes, all right, you have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow. Or, hey, I'm gonna slide out next yard. Back then, it used to be easy to get out to the yard. So, you know, when you're cool with somebody, be like, hey, fool, come out the next yard. Hey, well, bullshit. All right, Holmes, I'll be out here. So, you know, the pleasantries are exchanged. And the guy from Flores was shaking someone's hand, and it was at the handball court right next to the 5-block patio, because 5-block is the only block that didn't have a shoe yard, a concrete yard connected to it. I don't know why, but they're the only yard that didn't. And so there's like a patio right there. It's not really a patio. What happened was they put the flooring for the groundwork for the concrete yard, but they never put the walls up. Right. And so they were right there, and the guy from Flores was shaking the guy's hand, giving him his pleasantries. Shanky slid in and tried to hit him in his heart. He hit him, I believe it was 3 times in his left armpit, or near his left armpit, rib cage area, if I remember right. The guy from Flores spun around and saw who it was. And being his younger homeboy from the SGV, I think he was more disappointed. And instead of attacking him, he backed up. Shanky backed up. And this is a mistake. In prison, at least for the Southerners, it was a rule. When you move on somebody, do not let them back to the cell. You don't let him back to the cell because he's going to get a weapon, and then he's a threat to everyone on that tier. It becomes a liability, right? Well, Shanky, I don't think, knew about that rule and thought, I hit him, he'll fucking go get medical attention. No. Again, this was a serious dude. He had a serious reputation. The guy made it back to his cell, patched himself up. Cops didn't see nothing. And Shanky happened to be on the same tier with him, lived on the same tier. So later that evening, they ran the chow hall. At the time, New Folsom still allowed people to go to the chow hall. There were years where you couldn't go to the chow hall, and I believe now you can go back into the chow hall. So when they went to the chow hall, the guy from Flores is sitting down, and Shanky happened to be on the table behind him. So when they called for the roll to get up and go, the guy from Flores got up and proceeded to beat the dog shit out of Shanky. Why no one jumped in, why no one was strapped on point, I believe that was a failure in communication. But it is what it is. Shanky they both went to AdSeg. And at the sergeant's review, because they didn't know, they thought it was a fist fight. because they didn't do the medical record, the medical exam. Whenever you're going to go to the hole, medical will check you out, have you take your shirt off, check you for injuries, and then you get, once you're cleared by medical, you go to ADSEG. So when the sergeant did the 24-hour review, and again, it was a sergeant review because they thought it was a regular fist fight. When the sergeant pulled them out individually, he noticed there was no 7219, which is the medical portion of the medical form that has to be in your lockup order. When he saw it was missing, he notified medical, hey, I need a 7219 on these two. When they did the 7219, that's when they found the 3 holes on the one individual's body. When they found the 3 holes, then the lockup order had to be rewritten, retyped up, and new charges on Shanki, now for attempted murder. Shanki was found, the victim never cooperated. But Shanki was found guilty of an attempted murder and was sent to Pelican Bay. He was in Pelican Bay less than a month, and he beat his 115. He beat his write-up because his whole argument was, I was picked up for a fist fight, and the 7219 was performed more than 24 hours after the fight. I don't know where those injuries came from. And because the victim never cooperated, they could not pin the holes. Everybody knew, they knew what happened. But there was a window and Shanki beat it. So when Shanki came back to New Folsom with us, landed on the same yard with us, when he went to get his property, I went with him. And he went to the property window right there on the yard, grabbed his stuff, and we walked back, and we're on the top of the yard in the Southerners area on the table. And Shanki says this. He says, you know what? I still got respect for the homie. He said he did what he did, Holmes, but he didn't rat on me. He goes, and that vato could have really fucked me up, man. He could have really hurt me. I know he could have killed me in that chow hall. He said, before the cops separated us, he goes, when he was on top of me, he goes, he whispered in my ear, the next time you move on somebody, you take them down. You take them to the dirt. I could have killed you tonight. And he says, even after I put holes in him, he still gave me clecha. He said he could have killed me. I fucked up letting him go back to that cell. I should have stayed on him. He said, lesson learned. He said, the next pegada that I do, the next hit, the next thing I do, the whole world's going to hear about it. He goes, the whole state is going to hear about it. He goes, watch. He goes, I'm going to make up for that one. And we're like, yeah, all right, almost calm down, killer. The regular, smack talk on the yard. Well, the next thing that happened was, the next thing that Shanki was involved with was the riot in 96. September of 1996. And Shanki got caught flat-footed. Just like always, there's a plan. There's a plan when you're going to conduct a riot. The Southerners always plan. Every group, I think, plans their attack, how they're going to do it. And there was a plan. I wasn't on the yard at the time. I had just a few months prior got into it with the Bulldogs on the upper basketball court. But being that I was part of the leadership in ADSEG, I was made aware of pretty much everything that happened. And so this is what happened. I said the other day, there was a brown bag on the yard, placed on the yard, that was full of knives. And all the Southerners were told, if you don't have a strap, if you need a strap, go to that bag discreetly, grab you a piece. It's not a shopping store. Don't start digging around and find the one you want. Reach in, grab one, put it in your pocket, and move on, right? And someone decided that they were going to disregard that and do a little window shopping. They, were on that bag a little too long. Tower happened to notice the bag there and I guess was interested in what is that bag and why do the Southerners keep going to it one at a time. One of the homies, a youngster, went to the bag, digging around, fumbling around in there, put something in his pocket and takes off. That's what the Tower observed. The Tower told the yard cops, hey, that dude on the track, he just put something, he got something out of the bag, he put it in his pocket, he's on the track, and pat him down. The officers decided they're going to approach him. Everybody knows Southerners aren't going to just give up a knife if they have it on them and the cops come to pat him down. There's a very, 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 very high probability he's going to pull it out and he's going to use it because he's not going to just get caught with it. Okay? So these cops are following the homie. Other dudes were watching the whole thing and they said, man, this vato fucked up. Let's get up. We got to go. So the plan is now out the window. People they don't have time to huddle up and, hey, Holmes, look, this was what happened. They see the cops are on the dude. They're following him. He notices. He's trying to get away from him. Homies hit the track and they're just telling the other vatos, we got to go. We got to go. It's time to go. So dudes are jumping on the track. Everybody headed down to the bottom of the yard, which is where the blacks were at. Shanky happened to be over by the handball court, chapel door area, and it jumps off. When it jumps off, Shanky rushed whoever he rushed. However, Shanky was very, very close to a certain individual from Crazy Riders. Him and two other homies happened to be on Blood Alley, in Blood Alley. And there was someone that tried to correct me before. Blood Alley's in Old Folsom. Blood Alley was in New Folsom as well. B facility, lower handball court, right next to the laundry room. So don't correct me. If you weren't there, that's on you. So these three homies were in Blood Alley. There's a two-letter group, a two-letter organization that the Bloods have. There's a three-letter and a two-letter. The two-letter organization, that was their hangout. It was well known at the time, 1996 in New Folsom. That two-letter organization by the Bloods was probably, at least for the Southerners, recognized as the most militant, the most organized, and the most serious black faction on the yard. And imagine, these three happen to be in there by themselves. The rest of the Southerners were concentrated on the 7-block concrete wall, shoe yard wall, somewhere in the 8-block, which was close to Blood Alley, but that's where the majority of them were at. Once the riot was engaged, it's every man for yourself. And those three had about 20 Bloods on them. As everyone knows, the Southerners, when they move in waves. They attack, they'll back up, everybody get down. Hey, you vatos good over there? Hey, you good? Everybody good? And then somebody's going to jump up. A group is going to jump up, attack, engage, back up, get down. Another group will get up, attack, engage, get down. And that's going to continue until the Southerners say they're done. And that's usually once they kill a Southerner. That's the cops kill a Southerner. And then it's like, hey, they shot the homie. Let's go. Sometimes they'll still continue depending on where the homie shot. So the first engagement, the first entanglement happened. And then when they backed up and got down, Shanky noticed that his very good friend was with only two other dudes, outnumbered in Blood Alley. So when the groups got up again to re-engage, Shanky from in front of the chapel, anybody that's been on New Folsom Yard, you know where that's at, decided he was going to run to Blood Alley and go assist his friend. So he had to run down the little embankment into the grassy area. Back then, there was no track on the grass. The track was only on the track, the original track. And he ran down there, was running across, all the way across the yard, the grass area. There were only 2 COs on the yard. All the other COs had left, had ran off the yard because the announcement was made by the tower officer for all COs to leave because they were going to start laying down mini 14 shots. They were going to be firing the launchers, the minis. The place was out of control, and the COs were going to try to take it back over with firing their weapons. They didn't want to hit any COs. 2 COs disregarded. One of them was in the middle of the yard in the grass, in between where Shanky was and where his friend was in Blood Alley. That CO panicked. That CO thought Shanky was going to hit him because he was yelling, giving verbal orders, directives for Shanky to get down. Shanky got down. When everyone else got down, when everyone got up, he got back up, took off running back in that direction. The CO yelled a specific code into his mic. I don't remember what the code was, but he yelled a code that Central Tower and the rest of the COs know. I don't know their codes, you know, and it's like code this, code that. So it wasn't, he was talking in code. And when he did that, the cop in the tower fired around at Shanky. Shanky was bent over, about to get down. The bullet hit his right butt cheek. When it hit his right butt cheek, it glanced across. It hit the bone, a hip bone, I don't know what bone, and glanced across and went across his chest this way, severing the aorta. Nobody knew how bad he was hit, and he bled out. He died. He manifested his own destiny through the decisions he made that day, and when he said, "The next thing I do, everyone is going to hear about it."
The Sacramento County coroner has now identified the inmate killed today as 22-year-old Victor Hugo Flores of Los Angeles. He was serving an 18-year sentence for manslaughter and attempted murder.
As you see, Shanky made worldwide news. But more importantly, and what I want to tell the story for is this. Shanky was 22 years old when he lost his life. He wasn't serving a life sentence. He was serving 18 years. He could have been serving 8 years. He was still going to make the decisions he was going to make, and so was everyone else, including the COs. Those of you that think, "Oh, I'm not a gangster, I'm just a criminal, I'm just, I do petty crimes, this and this and that." I met a lot of dudes in prison that started on a level 1. Got stupid write-ups, wound up on a level 2. Fist fight here and there. Then they were level 3. Then they had to do a pegada. They had to do a hit, whatever. They wound up on a level 4. On level 4, ain't nobody asking you, "Hey, Holmes, you going home soon?" "Oh, okay, never mind, Holmes. I was going to ask if you could help the pad out." Now you're there. You're there and you're taking up a bunk. There's no dead weight. You get on them yards, you get in them bunks, you're going to earn it. You are going to participate. They're going to decide what your level of participation is. At least they're going to ask you to do certain things based on the way you're programming or who you're close to. And is it easier for you to get close to a target than someone else? If so, you're going to be asked for a favor. Shanky was a good dude, man. I have good memories with him. Condolences to his family all these years later. The last time I did a video on Shanky, a family member of his was in the chat. I want you to know this. When Shanky his life was taken by that correctional officer, we had originally got some bad information in I'd say that he was shot in the head, that it was intentional, it was a kill shot. Back then in I'd say in New Folsom, they didn't cuff both people when there was an escort. They cuffed one person. And so it was immediately agreed upon. We're hitting at least one cop. So there was discussions going on, and everyone was so upset. The COs noticed it. They pay attention when they're handing out the trays, when they're handing out the juice and coffee in the mornings. They're like, hey, you guys good? You guys good? And yeah, we're good, eh? Of course we're good. Why? But they could sense it, and they knew, for whatever reason, they knew it wasn't just the black population that the Southerners were upset with. It was the COs, because Shanki's life had been taken. So I was part of the leadership back there. Someone else who was part of the leadership is a very well-known current legend right now. And they sent 2 correctional officers, one to my cell and one to the legend cell, the current legend. He wasn't a legend at the time. We were young, we were making our bones. And the 2 officers that were sent to us were the 2 officers that picked up Shanki, put him on the gurney, and escorted him. And they said, the one that came to our cell, my cell, said, hey, if you guys are upset, we don't know what you're hearing, but we want you to know this. Your homie was shot in the right butt cheek. He wasn't shot anywhere else. He was shot in the right butt cheek. He was talking to us. He's the first one. They said, this is facts. They said there were blacks shot all over the yard. We made sure we got the Southerner off the yard first. And he said, when we were taking him into B control, and you know, right there is when the inmate has to say, or convict has to say, their CDC number. He said, as we were taking him in, when we were going through the first doorway, he looked at us and he said, hey man, did I get shot? And the CO said, they looked down and they were like, yeah, you got shot. And he goes, where did I get shot at? And they said, you got shot in the right butt cheek. And then he looked at me and goes, all right. And he put his head back down and he closed his eyes. About a minute later, they asked him, hey, say your CDC number, man. He was already dead. The CO said, we noticed he was white as a ghost. We didn't understand the internal bleeding he was dealing with. So that right there stopped maybe more deaths on the blue side, meaning the convict side. Prison, I tell you over and over and over, prison is a very serious place, a very violent place. 18 years, no life sentence. And he lost his life. I told that story about just now, that portion about Shanki, because if any of his family members see, he wasn't suffering. He wasn't in pain. He was engaging with the COs until he no longer could. He did what he believed in, and he died for it. You can't knock him. But the rest of you listening to this right now, if you don't have it in you to do what he did and to die like that, you better change your life now. Because once you get in there, you're going to be asked to perform sooner or later. And when you do, that's between you and God. That's my video for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Everybody, please be safe, be smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them. I'm out of here.